Canada and the United States have always seemed like best friends, neighbors who get along great and usually share everything, from hockey games to maple syrup pancakes. But lately, things have gotten pretty tense between these two friendly neighbors, and it's all about trade. It started when former US President Donald Trump decided to slap some heavy taxes, known as tariffs, on stuff Canada was selling to America. Usually, Canada stays calm and friendly, talking things out gently until everyone agrees again. But this time, Canada surprised everyone by standing up tall and saying, "Enough is enough." Instead of quietly working behind the scenes, Canada chose to take a tough stance. This new attitude was like a big surprise, not only to the United States but also to other countries watching around the world. At first, the argument between the two countries focused on things like cars, steel, and farm products. But now people are starting to wonder if Canada might use its secret weapon, things like oil, natural gas, and valuable minerals. These resources are super important to America's factories and businesses, helping them run smoothly every day. When the US put pressure on Canada with new tariffs, Canada's government basically told them, "Be careful. We've got something powerful that could really mess things up for you." This bold new attitude has everyone paying attention and asking questions. What exactly is Canada planning to do next? Could the United States really lose control of the situation? And most importantly, who will come out ahead? Sure, Canada and the US have had disagreements about trade before, but they usually manage to quietly work things out. This time, though, it's completely different. Donald Trump made it clear he believed the US wasn't being treated fairly. He argued, "Canada is getting an unfair advantage. We're losing money, and I have to protect American businesses." To fix this, he threatened to raise tariffs dramatically, not just on cars and metal, but even things like milk and cheese. And the results of this tough stance showed up fast. Canada responded strongly, announcing they'd hit back by placing 25% tariffs on American products worth a huge amount, $155 billion. Things between Canada and the US used to be calm and easy, like two neighbors trading baseball cards after school. But now things have gotten tricky. Canada just hit back against the US by putting extra charges, called tariffs, on lots of things Americans sell to them. And it's not just one or two things. Canada spread out these tariffs to include many different products, from foods to manufactured goods. This move shocked everyday Americans. Some even started wondering, wait, is Canada turning against us now? Canada quickly tried to make things clear by saying, "Hey, we're still your friend, but if you charge us more, we have to charge you the same way." You see, Canada isn't just another country on the map. It's got something really special, lots of oil and gas hidden deep underground. One particular area in Canada called Alberta is famous for having huge amounts of thick oil buried in the sands there. In fact, Canada is right up there with some of the biggest oil countries in the world, like Saudi Arabia. Why does this matter so much? Because America really counts on Canada's oil and gas to keep things running. Pipes and ships carry Canadian oil right into the United States, making it cheap and easy. For a long time, the US has felt safe knowing it can count on this steady flow of energy coming from Canada. And it's not just oil. Canada also sells tons of natural gas to America, more than almost any other country. Now here's where things get interesting. Because Canada supplies so much energy, it has some real power. Canada could easily say to the US, "Hey, if you keep treating us unfairly with tariffs, we might just stop sending oil and gas your way." This idea makes American leaders nervous. Sure, the US produces some energy of its own, but it still relies heavily on Canadian supplies. Many factories in the middle of America are specially built to use Canada's thicker oil, and switching to a different type from faraway countries would be expensive and difficult. If Canada really decided to slow down or even stop shipping oil and gas, American factories and drivers would face big problems. Gas prices at the pump could rise quickly. Factories might have to pay way more to run machines, and that means everything, from driving cars to buying groceries, could get more expensive for Americans. But here's the thing. Canada wouldn't exactly enjoy doing this either. The Canadian economy gets a ton of money by selling its energy. If Canada slowed down these sales even for a little while, it would hurt their own economy too. Still, Canada's leaders seem ready to say, if we have to take a short-term hit to stand up for ourselves, we will. Canada isn't just sitting back and accepting new trade restrictions, it's pushing back in a big way. Officials in Ottawa have made it clear that if the US keeps making things difficult, Canada has other options. One big move, selling its oil and gas elsewhere. For years, most of Canada's energy exports have flowed straight to the United States through an extensive network of pipelines and shipping routes. Shifting that supply to other buyers, like Europe or Asia, wouldn't be easy, but it's not impossible. With global demand for energy always rising, Canada knows it has some serious bargaining power, and the US knows it too. That's why a major question is now being asked behind closed doors in Washington. What happens if Canada really does cut off the flow of oil and gas? Could the US handle an energy crisis if its biggest supplier suddenly turned off the tap? But oil and gas aren't the only things giving Canada leverage. The country is also rich in essential minerals, things like nickel, lithium, uranium, and rare earth elements. These are the building blocks of modern technology, powering everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to fighter jets and space satellites. For companies like Tesla and major chip manufacturers, Canada's supply of these minerals is critical. The US has been trying to secure access to them, especially since tensions with China, another key supplier, have made it risky to rely on foreign sources. Now imagine if Canada decided to limit its exports or raise the cost of these resources. It would be a major blow to American industries, causing shortages and driving up production costs. And Canada isn't just talking, it's taking action. Officials have rolled out what they're calling a two-stage retaliation plan to hit back at US tariffs. The first phase is already in motion, a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of American goods, effective February 4th, 2025. This primarily targets everyday consumer products, things like food, clothing, and household items. The second phase, even bigger. A 25% surtax on an additional $125 billion worth of American imports. If both phases go into full effect, American businesses and consumers will feel the pressure. Right now, Canada is thinking about adding even more products to its list of American goods that will face higher taxes, called tariffs. They haven't decided exactly which items will make the cut yet, but people expect they'll include big things like cars, trucks, and boats, as well as important materials like steel and aluminum. Fruits, vegetables, dairy foods, beef, pork, and even parts for airplanes might also end up on the list. This tough new plan from Canada has surprised a lot of people because Canada usually stays calm and polite. Now they're making bold moves that feel very different from their usual friendly approach. Some folks are even calling this Canada's big moment, saying it's almost like the country decided to stand up and show its strength. But how does this change feel to people in America? People in Washington, D.C. are definitely paying attention, and they're getting worried. American car companies in particular are feeling pretty nervous. They've spent years smoothly trading car parts back and forth with Canada, making everything cheaper and easier. But if Canada adds extra taxes on car parts, making vehicles could become more expensive. This means American families might have to pay a lot more to buy a car, sometimes thousands of extra dollars. And this isn't just about gas-powered cars. Electric vehicles are part of this too. Electric cars use batteries that rely on parts from Canada, sensors from Mexico, and final assembly often happens right in the United States. If Canada keeps adding extra costs, the price of electric cars could become unpredictable and might jump significantly. Canada isn't shy about saying they might find other friends to trade with if America keeps pushing. They've hinted that they could start working more closely with countries like China, South Korea, or countries in Europe, especially for new technology in electric vehicles and batteries. Inside Canada, this tougher approach is getting lots of support from regular people. Canadians are known for being friendly and fair, and they usually prefer to keep things peaceful. But lately, many Canadians feel the United States hasn't been treating them fairly or respectfully. They've grown tired of feeling ignored or pushed around by America's recent policies. Canada's leaders, like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and other important officials, have openly said that while they're happy to be good neighbors, they'll defend themselves strongly if they're treated unfairly. Local communities in Canada, especially cities like Windsor and other parts of Ontario, are worried too, because their jobs depend heavily on cars and steel. They've warned clearly that any serious trade fight with the United States could impact them greatly because their local economies are closely connected to the American auto industry. Right now, things between the US and Canada feel a bit like a tug-of-war game at school recess. America keeps pulling harder with extra taxes, and Canada has decided it won't simply let go. Instead, it's pulling back just as strongly. Canada's latest move is surprising a lot of people. They're picking out very specific American products, things that are important to particular states, and making those items more expensive to sell in Canada. For example, they've put extra fees on steel and aluminum coming from America, but they're also charging more for tasty treats like peanut butter, chocolate candies, and fruit juice. Even dairy products like milk and cheese got included. Why pick these items? Well, Canada chose things made in places that have a lot of power in the United States, like cheese from Wisconsin, candy from Pennsylvania, whiskey from Kentucky, and milk from Mississippi. The idea is that the companies making these products will start getting upset because they're losing sales in Canada. They'll then go tell American leaders, "Please stop this fight. We're losing customers and it's hurting our businesses." So instead of just arguing directly with American leaders, Canada is cleverly getting everyday American businesses involved in the fight. They're basically telling them, hey, if you don't like these tariffs, talk to your own government leaders and tell them to make a change. But Canada isn't stopping there. They've hinted they might also raise prices on technology items like computers, batteries, high-tech electronics, and phone equipment coming from the US. That makes big American companies nervous, especially those in areas known for technology and cars, like California's Silicon Valley and Michigan's Detroit. What Canada is really saying is simple. Don't think we'll just sit quietly while you charge us more. We have ways to push back too. A lot of people used to think Canada was like America's little brother, friendly, polite, and ready to do whatever America wanted. But now everyone sees Canada stepping up and taking charge. They're changing the way the game is played, and it's got everyone watching closely. People are even wondering if America could lose control of the situation altogether. Another big worry is that this could lead to higher prices in America. If the US keeps making Canadian products more expensive, everyday items will cost more for American families. Even the American Central Bank, called the Fed, warned that prices could start rising fast because of this fight with Canada. Electric cars are a great example. They already cost a lot, but if parts or batteries from Canada become harder or more expensive to get, prices could shoot even higher. That means families wanting to help the environment by driving electric cars might struggle to afford them. Right now, nobody knows exactly who this situation helps. Canada knows it relies a lot on America, and if they don't take action, they could end up losing a lot of business. Canadian leaders think it's better to show strength now, even if it means some pain, rather than staying quiet and facing bigger problems later. Canada used to act like the calm kid at school who never fought back, quietly dealing with small issues to keep friendships intact. But lately, Canada decided it's done playing nice. Instead, it's taking bold big moves against products from the US, changing the whole game. At first, Canada aimed its new taxes mostly at American steel, aluminum, and car parts. But then things got even more interesting. Canada started targeting products that American families care a lot about: foods and everyday items like fruits, snacks, and drinks. You might think these items wouldn't matter much, but losing these markets can upset people pretty quickly. Imagine you're a farmer in Iowa who grows corn, or someone in Kentucky who makes tasty whiskey. If Canada stops buying your products, that's a big problem. People in these places might start asking their leaders, hey, why are we losing customers? We need Canada's business. All this puts serious pressure on US politicians. Even someone like Trump, who doesn't like backing down, might have to think twice. He might have to decide. Keep fighting Canada and risk making American businesses angry, or soften his stance and avoid more problems. Either way, it creates a tough choice. This could keep going back and forth, getting messier each time, a trade war that doesn't stop. Canada knows it isn't alone either. Other countries like China and European nations are also arguing with America. This gives Canada a chance to get closer to these countries and create new deals. For example, Canada already has trade agreements with Europe and countries around the Pacific Ocean. It's telling America clearly, if you don't want to trade fairly, we'll just make friends somewhere else. American companies, especially those making electric cars, are worried about this. Canada is full of important minerals and materials needed for electric vehicle batteries, like lithium and nickel. If Canada decides to sell these things mainly to Europe or Asia instead, American companies could face serious problems. Car makers in the US might need to pay more to get these important parts, making electric vehicles much more expensive for customers. Families expecting cheaper electric cars, like Teslas, could get disappointed. They'll wonder, why are these cars suddenly costing more? The answer, because of the trade fight between Canada and America. High prices on electric vehicles and buses could even make it harder for the US to reach its climate goals, slowing down the shift to cleaner transportation. Meanwhile, Canadians themselves are feeling proud of how strongly their government is responding. Polls show that many Canadians support this tougher attitude. Newspapers in Canada are even saying things like, "Finally, we're standing up for ourselves." All of this sends a clear message to America. Canada isn't stuck relying only on American customers. They have choices. If tensions rise too high, maybe the US will decide to sit down and talk things over again, but nobody is sure. Trump, known for being stubborn, could refuse to budge, making things even harder for everyone involved. Canada decided to play things very smart this time. Instead of simply making everything from America more expensive, Canada carefully picked the exact products that would make people in the United States upset. It was like choosing which domino to push first, knowing exactly how the rest would fall. They didn't just raise prices on random things. Canada looked carefully at what mattered most in different parts of America. Things like whiskey in Kentucky, chocolate in Pennsylvania, fruit juices in Florida, and farm products in Iowa. These aren't just random products. They are super important to the people who live in these places. By making these items more expensive, Canada is causing real trouble for American companies in exactly the spots where it hurts the most. Because of this, American businesses are getting worried. They're starting to tell their leaders, hey, please stop arguing with Canada. We're losing customers and it's getting harder to run our companies. What Canada did was pretty clever. Instead of just having a regular trade argument, Canada made sure American voters and businesses would feel the pressure and complain loudly. They're basically making Americans ask their own leaders to fix things fast. Before, President Trump was used to getting his way by being tough and making threats. He often bragged, if I hit the table hard enough, I'll get what I want. But now Canada is doing the same thing back. They're standing tall and telling Trump, you're not the only one who can hit the table. People watching this closely think Canada's bold move is changing the entire game. Now everyone realizes Canada won't just quietly go along with whatever America wants. This new attitude is shaking things up, both economically and in terms of relationships between the two countries. The situation puts Trump in a tough spot. If he backs down, people might call him weak or say he lost. But if he keeps fighting, American families could end up paying a lot more for everyday items. Businesses would struggle, and many people could face financial problems. On top of that, if neither side wants to compromise, the fight could drag on for a long time, hurting both Canada and America. Even Mexico, America's other neighbor, is getting nervous, asking everyone, hey, let's calm down. We already have enough problems to deal with. Canada's decision to push back hard against America isn't just about trade. It's also changing how other countries see things. Imagine it like a playground. One kid finally stands up to a bigger kid, and suddenly all the other kids realize they can stand up too. Canada's boldness might inspire more countries around the world to challenge unfair deals instead of accepting them quietly. If other countries start copying Canada's example, we could see a lot more fights like this popping up. That means global trade might become less predictable and more complicated. Instead of quietly making deals behind closed doors, countries might openly argue and fight over trade more often. This could totally change how big companies operate. For instance, companies that build electric cars, computers, or smartphones depend on parts from all around the world. If countries keep putting extra taxes, tariffs, on these products, the cost of making them could shoot up. Eventually, this means regular people might find these products too expensive to buy. For example, electric cars are supposed to help the environment by making it easier to stop using gas-powered vehicles. But if these cars become very expensive because of trade battles, families might have to keep using older, less environmentally friendly cars. That could slow down the entire shift toward clean energy. In America, this situation could cause even bigger issues. If the government insists on keeping tariffs high, everyday products like cars, electronics, food, and even clothing might cost a lot more. Families might find themselves spending extra money every time they shop. That could lead to frustration, anger, and more pressure on leaders to change their policies. Canada knows exactly what it's doing. Even if it hurts them temporarily, they're hoping their tough response sends a clear signal. They're showing that they're not weak and they're willing to handle some short-term pain to keep America from controlling the entire trade relationship. This whole situation creates uncertainty and tension everywhere. Leaders from the United States might feel forced to back down eventually, worried about upsetting their voters. Or they might become stubborn, refusing to give in and causing the fight to drag on, hurting everyone involved. Other countries like Mexico are watching nervously too, hoping things don't get worse. If Canada and the United States can't figure things out, it could even disrupt other big trade deals involving Mexico. Basically, Canada's strong new position is like throwing a big stone into a quiet pond. It creates waves that reach far beyond just these two countries. And now everyone is carefully watching to see what happens next.